All right, as Wooderson would say on Dazed and Confused. We got Plate and Ponder Empty Nesting with Jen and Chris Fenton. But today, we have a really special guest with us. It's Pastor Bryon Bos. We are going to have a secular conversation with somebody that I really, really respect, both as a human, but also somebody that's running a church here in Manhattan Beach called South Hills. I think everybody will have a really fun time listening to this. I just wanted to remind everybody also that we are now officially in 45 markets around the world. Not too bad for a hobby between Jen and myself. We do want everybody to review and engage with the podcast as much as possible on any of your platforms, and make sure you give us a follow. So without further ado, Pastor Bryon Bos, I'm going to call you Bryon today because we're going to have a secular conversation about a lot of things that I think you have a really good perspective on. Why don't you say hello to this audience?
Hello, and yes, please, Bryon. I get a little nervous when people say pastor. There are a handful that are pretty old school like that, and they'll be like, Pastor, can I talk to you? And I'm like, yes, but you can call me Bryon, please.
Make sure you talk into that mic because everybody's got to hear that. You don't have a face for radio like myself. You have a face for the movie screen, but you also got a great voice too. In fact, you probably can look at those guitars there and pick them up and do stuff with those that I've never been able to do. You are a musician by trade, right?
Yeah, actually, most of what I've done my adult life has been in music, and obviously most that would be in church because most of my adult life has been spent in doing kind of ministry things. But yeah, most of it's been music. There was a section in Nashville where I was writing for different types of music, but yeah, that's been a big part of my story. Well,
we're going to get into that story. I mean, one of the reasons why I wanted you on is that I think a lot of listeners know that my wife is Jewish and my kids are Jewish, but I grew up Episcopalian, and I've been going to your church for a while, and I just love the inclusivity of it and the fact that you're somebody when away from the church, you can have these amazing sort of secular conversations about really important things that are happening in people's lives without necessarily polarizing the conversation by pulling it into things where maybe some people, if you're Jewish, would be turned off by it, or if you're atheist or whatever. So we're going to hit a couple subjects today in that, with taking that into mind. Like, I think your perspective is really interesting coming from the church, coming from a pastor, but I also think you have this really interesting secular point of view that brings some of that upbringing into it. So where did you start? Like, where did you grow up? Whereabouts in the country?
I was actually born in LA County. So I was born in Bellflower, which is just kind of a small little city inside LA County, not inside of the hustle bustle, but kind of just on the outskirts. And I was born to a very traditional Reformed family. Reformed kind of means a bunch of different things, but in the Christian world, it is extremely traditional. And families on both sides, mom and dad, Dutch Reformed, if you want to get detailed in it. But anyhow, we went through seasons of life where I will say this, most of everything in my life has been centered around church. My parents were involved in it. My parents were leaders in it in the beginning stages and then became pastors and all of that. So for me, a lot of what I did as a kid patterned around what church we went to, the community that we were involved in at that time. But I went to Christian school in Bellflower before we moved inland for a few years. I went to the middle school, which would have been the high school where both of my parents graduated, which was Valley Christian.
So when you go to Valley, okay, so you went to Valley Christian?
So I went my 6th grade year, which is like the first year you kind of step into Valley Christian.
Okay.
And yeah.
So when you go to a school like that, I mean, how many kids are actually the offspring of somebody that's in the church, or is it very rare?
So here's what's crazy is I grew up at Bellflower Christian, and then Valley Christian. I mean, all those kids, when there was a kid that didn't grow up in church, that was the odd one. Like,
really?
Yeah, it was really different for me. Because now I know that's very different in the private sector. Like, you'll find a lot of private schools where they're coming from everywhere because they know the education's great or the system's great that they're going into. But where we were,
well, it's interesting because even, I mean, if you look at Loyola or Loyola High School, there's a lot of Jewish kids there go there, or people that are just not religious at all. Right?
Exactly. So where we went, there was randomly one out of 25 that you knew maybe didn't go to either the Reformed Church, the Dutch Reformed Church, all that kind of stuff. And you thought, oh, I wonder what they do. As a kid that only knew that, it was like, huh, I wonder what they do. But I was raised in a family that never really looked at it as like, ooh, they don't go, or they're not involved like we are.
Right.
So yeah, that was my upbringing.
Okay, so then if does that take us into high school? Like where it was, so high
So
school
we
was
moved inland. We moved actually we moved deep inland for a couple years, and then we ended up in Corona, which is about an hour from where we're
Right.
at now. And I did my high school there, my high school years there, and those were rough years for me. Like I was a really good kid up until summer of ninth grade.
summer
And,
ninth grade.
Yeah.
And were you playing sports or activities or?
So I played baseball. I played a handful of sports growing up until I was about 12, 13.
Right.
And then when we went inland, we moved to Corona in April, which is, I was just about to turn 15. And April's kind of like, the baseball team's already picked. Everything's kind of already set. A bunch of other sports are done. So when I got there, I wanted to play baseball. And the coach actually had said, well, I'll give you a one-on-one tryout. But I wasn't playing a lot.
Right.
So I was a little nervous.
Yep.
I think I got this kind of thought.
What position?
I was always either right field, center field, or second base.
Okay, and then who was your team, your go-to team growing up as far as a fan?
I'm a Dodgers fan, of course, as a kid. Dodgers forever. But yeah, exactly.
All right, a little applause on that one. Dodgers are pretty good too.
Yeah, they're not bad. I will say though, when we lived deep inland, middle school, I didn't love to go to school. I always wanted to stay home, and when I would stay home,
You didn't let academics interfere with your education. That was
come on, man. I was a creative, you know. But anyways, I would watch WGN, so I'd watch Cubs games.
Okay.
Ryan Sandberg was one of my favorite players.
Right.
So was Steve Sachs. That second base position was kind of like my thing. You know?
Okay. Yeah, no, they were actually I mean, I grew up in South Florida and the Atlanta Braves were terrible. That was our local team. Being in Florida, we didn't have a baseball team down there at the time, and the Braves used to actually do their spring training in West Palm Beach. And every year it was just like trying to root for them just to get to 500. Like they were terrible back then. Unfortunately, we moved before the whole like sort of World Series type of Braves appeared. But the Cubs were always like an interesting team to watch, and there were definitely some years where you were like, oh, they're just as bad as the Braves.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm sure there was plenty. And obviously, the curse of the great Bambino, that was, maybe that was the cause.
So high school, like things, so where were you as far as, like as a freshman, were you sort of a bit rebellious and all that kind of stuff? Or were you still?
I didn't think I was at the time. I think just coming into a new atmosphere, a new setting, I loved everything and everyone. Like my brothers and I'm one of three boys. I'm the oldest of three boys, but we're all pretty similar. Like we usually have a lot of friends. I don't think we've ever been discriminatory in any way. Like I think it's always been, even the ones who were kind of the outcasts, we would make friends with. Why not?
Right.
You know? My brother Johnny, who's my youngest brother, he was 6'7", 360 in high school. Like I mean,
Really?
he was a huge kid. Yeah, he lost 180 pounds after high school. But anyways, he was just loved by everybody, and he was loved because he was a big teddy bear.
Well, if you're 6'7", and people better love you, they might have problems with you.
Yeah, exactly. But we kind of grew up that mentality of like, you just befriend anybody you can.
Right.
And so I don't know. I loved skateboarding at the time.
Right.
And so I think that era of the skateboarders and the skaters,
Right.
you had a lot of punk rock, a lot of stuff happening in the world, and anarchy was kind of the thing. So
Yep.
I ended up coming into a new place where most of the people I hung out with were doing things that I wasn't used to.
Right.
And I was a sheltered kid, but I wasn't like, my parents, they prevented a lot. It was like, if that's not what we believe in the house, we don't want you doing that. But they weren't crazy. It wasn't like overbearing. My dad was kicked out of high school for drugs when he was when he was a senior. So, and he became a pastor. So he definitely understood like life. So for me, I think that's when a lot happened when we moved into Corona. That's when my decision started being like, I don't mind trying stuff. So I partied pretty hard.
So, and then like as you went through high school, what did you think you were going to do later in life? Was it always, I wanted to follow the guide and the path to become a pastor someday, or were you musician or what? Like,
not a chance on pastoring. I mean, there was no desire in my mind to be the pastor. I don't know how I even say it. At this point, I know it's different, but I'm thinking of like when I was 15, 16, 17.
So what was driving you then?
I was either going to be a rock star or I was going to work for the government.
Okay.
No joke, man. Like,
work for the government, or is it okay?
Like
we were just talking about Epstein before this. We're like,
yeah.
hopefully not on that intelligence level that he was in, but yeah, I mean that's about as opposite as you can get, the government or a rock star.
100%. And I mean, to the point of like, this is like moving forward a little bit, but when I was 17, we had a good family friend who was a naval officer, and he was on the Department of Defense and stuff. And I wanted to go into the Navy and be a Navy SEAL. And I was determined, man. I was a pretty stubborn, bullheaded kid, and I thought I could do anything, accomplish anything. And he was like, well, I can get you in for some of the writtens and the stuff that you need, but at the end of the day, you're going to have to beat those those scores and those tests and get in there yourself. And I was all set to go. And yeah, that's where, after my decisions in high school and everything, my girlfriend got pregnant. How about that?
Well, that would change everything,
Yeah.
and it probably puts a bit of a delay on rock stardom too. Where were you living at the time? Were you out in Corona then?
Yeah, we were in Corona. I was I think I was 17 when I found out.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I mean, if we were talking earlier about how life's got three acts in a lot of ways. It probably repeats a bunch of times throughout the years, but that I would imagine there was a moment where that was sort of a low point, but then also you re-looked at it and maybe you started to think, well, maybe it was sort of the beginning of a crescendo, like one of the two. It's hard to digest that as a 17-year-old, I imagine.
I don't, looking back at it, the only thing I can say is that I made the best decisions I could, which led to today. So I'm proud of them.
Right.
I after all the mistakes, whenever I look at it, I think, man, I had two kids, and without going into all the story,
Right.
I had two kids by the time I was 21 years old. I had no idea how to do that, what I was going to do, but I made the decision to say, I'm going to do this, because they're going to depend on me. I mean, now I'm going to be a dad.
Well, everybody always says it's like you're never ready to
I
have
don't care
kids,
how
right?
old you
Like
are.
you're never ready.
No.
But I would say at 17 and pre-21, that would qualify as definitely not ready.
Oh, and I don't think, looking back now, all I can remember is having the mindset of like, well, I have to do this. Like, just I have to
Right.
do this, I didn't think twice of like, how can I get out of this?
Right.
I thought I have to do this,
It's an incredible. I mean, to me, I think the most important people in life that you get advice from, or get any sort of a re-belief in yourself, it has to come from somebody that you really believe understands what they're talking about, number one. But number two is you want to know that they went through something similar too. Like, they got to have that relevancy and that understanding, right?
Well, my dad used to put it this way. My dad used to always say, I want to follow a leader with a limp. And I'm like, oh, that makes total sense. Somebody who has been through it, somebody who's like, I get it. I understand your struggle, whatever you're going through. I get it.
I want to follow a leader with a limp. That might be the title of this episode. That's a brilliant piece of advice.
Thank you, John Bos.
Did he ever find a leader with a limp?
I think, if going into the story of my family, you're looking at them. I mean, I like to be known as somebody who truly does understand. I think we all understand at the end of the day. That's the problem with humanity is that we've forgotten that we do understand what the next person is going through in some way or another. Maybe not exactly. I don't know how you feel in your situation right now, because I'm not you and I haven't gone through it and I'm not going through it, but I've been through other things. And if you can imagine that when you're up at night and you can't sleep, or when you're thinking over things and you're overwhelmed and you can't share it with anybody and you don't know how to say it or how to explain it, like the person next to you, every person next to you is going through that very same thing in a different way.
Yeah, it's sort of, I do think that's something that comes with age, where there are moments where you actually think, wow, no one's going through this, whatever trouble period I'm going through like this. They wouldn't understand, or no one's had this kind of issue with, a family member, or no one had, this kind of tragedy occur, or whatever it is. But you realize, wait, no, this has been going on throughout humanity in a lot of ways. And by the way, same with the celebrations and stuff. And I remember, actually in my probably my most, I guess, narcissist days, like as maybe going into college for the first time, and you just think you're walking in there and you own the place, right? And I just remember certain, I would write in a notebook like these quotes I would come up with that I thought were just brilliant quotes, and And then I would read a book or something later on, or there'd be some class, or I'd meet some person that was really impressive, and they would say the exact same thing, but even in a better way. And I'm just like, wait, I wasn't the first one that came up with that. Wait, what are you talking about? I think the only quote that I have in there that I haven't seen anybody else come up with, and I actually used it in my last book, was no one goes down in history for what they did on vacation.
Oh man, that's a gut buster right there.
When you think about that, right? Like, it's, you either go out and do stuff, do or do not. There is no try, right? That's what Yoda said.
Because I was a songwriter and involved in music and stuff, I love just wordsmithing, and I just love how words come together. One, because I think it helps us remember things. When you hear something that is, rhymes or relatable,
yeah,
obviously it sticks in your head. It helps you remember that more. But I think about the fact that every obstacle is an opportunity, and it's really how you look at it. Like if you run into an obstacle, or an obstacle's come your way, whatever it might be, like those are the opportunities to grow, to figure out how to get past whatever situation you're in, to get to the next level, step, whatever it might be. To your point of that, like I thought I knew it all. I thought I had the best view and the best perspective, but at the end of the day, like, holy cow, man, every obstacle that comes my way is an opportunity for me to grow or learn more, and I'm only getting that as I'm older now.
Well, and
I would have never thought that at 17.
I mean, you've lived it too, and that's always like something I talk about in my class at USC is, as far as you got to own all the tickets, which essentially means, if you want to win the lottery in life, you got to figure out how to get every ticket, and you're never going to get every ticket. But like everything you do in life, like every person you meet, every moment that you do away from just sitting in a room by yourself, like everything that you learn, everything that you experience, those are all tickets, and those will hopefully give you that winning ticket, that luck that you need to get successful in sort of whatever way you describe it. And your life experiences, I think, have given you this wisdom, this ability to be the sage person up on the pulpit. But at the same time, I think I love the fact, like for the last 10 minutes, you've been talking to me. If I had no idea you were a pastor, I wouldn't have expected you to be a pastor, right? You're able to like put two sort of ways to refer to things, one under under sort of the your belief in Christ and being a pastor, but then the other is about just life lessons and like being able to tell people things that I think they can pull away from and better themselves.
Well, and I think when you start to see the principles that like Christianity or I mean, my evangelical background comes from, I look at those principles as kind of a pathway to what I like to believe is like the promises that come from them. And it's not this kind of like, oh, well, you get the reward of following God if you do all these things. But in a sense, like that is the truth. Like if you do the right things in life, you're going to get the right results, right? For the most part. I mean, sometimes things just come your way that are unexpected, but it's the same with principles. And for me, all of those principles come from a specific place. And that, I mean, obviously mine comes from a moral compass of the Bible, but it's also the interpretation of the Bible. And like I say a lot on Sunday mornings or when we're in conversation or in group type things or counsel or whatever it might be, that like why the Bible says what it does, or why God says what he does, or why my belief system says what it says is just as important as what it says. I can read it for face value, or I can look at it and say, like, why? What's the purpose behind this? Why is this level of morality where I'm supposed to stand on, or why am I supposed to believe in that? What is the good, the bad, the indifferent in it? Like, what does it matter? And I don't think it's just about like, well, this is what Christians believe because this is what pleases the Lord. I think I look at it from a perspective of like, I believe these things because I've seen them work in my life.
Well,
I think
it's interesting too, because we have a lot of listeners that aren't Christians or maybe Jewish or atheists or whatever they are, but they all, I mean, everybody has certain guiding principles that they're trying to figure out as they go through life. And, some people, I know a lot of people that like say love following Gabby Bernstein and, or love their yoga, instructor because they talk about the universe and how to manifest things and all that stuff. Or, maybe somebody's a big Tony Robbins fan or whatever it is. Like everybody's trying to figure out, there's this term, a Roman term called ventus stultorum magistar, which means the event is a schoolmaster of fools. And I think as you get older, you realize maybe the best way to learn is not by my own mistakes, but by the mistakes of others, and maybe by the wisdom of others too. So everybody's trying to figure that out. And I think you found a way to teach and instruct people in a way that is extremely beneficial for the people of your congregation, but also for your friends. And then there's others out there that have done the same in different ways. And I think it's like let's pull it back into keep it a secular conversation from your perspective about a couple of the things that we talked about earlier, which like Jen and I like to talk about, things that are relatively serious. I was watching the State of the Union last night, and take politics out of it. There was obviously people that were angry about it, people that were divided about it, people that were supportive of it, people that were like overly supportive about it. There were people that boycotted it, and then on top of it, you wrap that into, say, the Epstein files, to, the justice system, to the way people are feeling disenfranchised by the way the system is working, which brings me into like 4 different things that I think your congregation comes away with when you're a pastor. But also, I'm curious on a secular level how you look at stuff in today's society, particularly here in the United States, but this can apply to 44 other markets too. I feel like there's a loss of faith in society, and I don't mean that just by faith in God or in Jesus. It's also about faith in a system, whether it's government, it's political, it's financial. There's this lack of community now, and I think social media is a big part of that. There's this moral compass, this ethical code that it seemed people lived by more than they do now, and I think our leadership tends to stray away from it, which then obviously infects the rest of people that follow. And then there's this lack of patriotism. So I'm curious, like, your thoughts on today's world in terms of, like, how about faith in general?
Yeah. So, when you said that, it triggered right away in my mind. I'm thinking that, our lack of faith has everything that we deal with as issues as humanity, I think, has to deal with our relationships in general, our relationship with each other. So when you think of faith, our faith is based on what we've experienced, right? Faith in my definition of what I know it to be is the evidence of things unseen, and it's like the hope of things that are not possibly there, right? To somebody who's thinking like, well, what is your faith? Well, my faith is that I don't know for sure, but yet I give you everything I got, and I'm believing with everything I have.
Right.
Otherwise, when it becomes a fact, it's not faith anymore, right? So faith is what we hope for, and I think what's happened is that in each other, our failures have become more prominent than anything. Failure is entertainment right now. Anything within reality TV, anything that's out there right now, like what we're looking for is failure. We're looking for conflict. We're looking for problems,
You think that's different now than it was, or
I
is
think
it?
we used to look for, bringing joy and kind of being encouraged. Some of the old comedies, like, sure, they'd get slapstick and they'd do something.
So I'll give the applause to looking for that back then, and then I think we got a sad trombone in terms of what you're saying.
Exactly. I think anything from how our streaming services are creating content and saying, like, we can't have, we need these scenes to flip every 3 seconds. We need certain things because people's attention need to be there, but also people's attention is on conflict and on failure.
Yeah.
That's what we want to see most. And so I think because we're so driven by our failures, that's what's most prominent. So our faith in the system, in others, in just everything in life has diminished because we're almost expecting failure. We're almost expecting conflict. We're expecting to have a problem everywhere we go. Oh, yeah, you know what? But I've already been there before. Like, oh yeah, well, you should have seen yesterday. That's kind of like the normal. How you doing today? Well, if it's anything like yesterday.
It's actually, that's fascinating. I didn't even really think about the expectation of failure. It's almost like we've gotten jaded to so many things not working out correctly. Like if we go try to, remove a leader from another country and we go mission accomplished, actually we're just assuming, okay, mission's not accomplished. We're going to watch this thing turn into a failed state, right? Like we're just used to it, like, or any sort of, let's see if, by getting rid of that regulation to let the banks actually make more money, that's great. Oh no, we're just going to assume Silicon Valley Bank is going to go bankrupt and we're going to have to bail it out. It's like that kind of thing where we're just assuming.
And it translates to everything else. If our hope because faith is the same thing. Our hope in life, it just always seems to be let down, always seems to be clouded by, hopelessness and fear and all of these things, that destruction and all that kind of stuff is like, that's what we're highlighting in the world today. So if we're highlighting those things, it's hard to have faith in anything.
Well, and the tribalism is rooting for it, right?
Gosh.
Like if it's not your team, you're rooting for failure, not just expecting it. You want it.
And I think, and I'll tell you this, Chris, I'm a bit of a romanticist in this idea of that. I do believe that people desire the right things. I do believe that people inherently deep down want what's best and they want to do good. Now you can say, well, there's some evil people out there. There's some evil out there. Well, sure there is. But I think those people are just overcome by everything they've experienced, all the stuff that they've seen and done, and their hopelessness is just so much stronger than most. And who's ever going to reach those people? So I have to have this mentality of that, like even the darkest of ones out there, like you want to really get into it, like the Epstein stuff, even that stuff. Like I have 6 kids. We didn't talk about all that. I mean, my oldest is 29. My youngest is.
By the way, we're gonna have to do like 100 episodes to get through all of this. And by the way, your kids, like, one of your kids is particularly just unbelievable singer and sort of carries his weight. He could be the rock star in the family for sure.
I'm gonna vicariously live through him. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But having 6 kids, from 29 on down to 3, 29 and 28 was when I was young. I shared just a piece of that way earlier. And then I was divorced at 21 and was a single dad. My mom really did most of the raising of those kids because I worked my tail off for a handful of years in the secular sector while I did a whole lot of church ministry. I started in at church ministry at 19. And then by the time I was 24, I took over the music ministry of a church that was pretty mature. But anyhow, in the middle of all that, my mom took care of the kids a lot of the school drop-offs, a lot of the pickups and stuff while I worked. And then I met my wife now when I was 29, and we've been married 18 years. And we have 2 teenagers and then 2 toddlers, well, 3 and 5. If I called her a toddler to her face, we'd have major trouble. She's smarter than me.
We obviously need Joe Rogan length podcast to get through some of what you just described in a sort of a Cliff Note version of that timeline and the kids. But I'm just gonna bet that there were times where you were expecting failure just right around the next corner. But then to get to where you are today, I'm assuming there were many times where you brought back that idea. I have faith I'm going to get this done. Like, I think, I inherently want to get it done. I believe in the good in people and I believe in the good in myself, and I'm going to get there.
Yeah. I think one of the things for me that I feel is like a little quirky that maybe is a positive, maybe helps, maybe it's a gift. But I struggle with my faith in the area of that. Let me just put it this way. My dad was kind of there's no option for going to church. There's no, you're going. We go to church, we tithe. I say that word tithe because it's like, that's your deepest of all of it. Like when you get to the point to where you're giving 10% of your finances to the church, like that's crazy, man. Well, my family, that was like, there's no option. That's what we do. At the same time, I also got heavily involved into drugs as a teenager. Were my parents totally oblivious? They didn't know anything? No, my dad's not dumb. He knew something was wrong. So it wasn't like he was crazy. There's no option. I'm forcing you in those doors. No, you're going to be there. So I just grew up with that mentality. So faith wasn't an option.
Right.
Even in my darkest of times, I still had faith. So, but today, the thing that I struggle with most is that I trust that God's principles, the principles that I believe in, the things that I have faith in, I trust that those things will work for me in life, will work for my family, will work for the community that's around me. If I have the fruit of what I believe my life should have, and that's goodness, gentleness, self-control, kindness, love, faith, joy, peace. Like, who doesn't want those things? Those are things that the Bible says are supposed to be. So if I have those things, then things are going to work out. But I'm going to tell you this right now. I always fear things are going to tank. I always think gosh, man, I know right around the corner, I'm going to trip and fall, and this is going to be tough, and this season's going to be so hard. I've gone through a lot of tough seasons. Yeah. But I've also always made the other side, and that part for me, I'm still struggling with believing it every time. Yeah. Well, it gives you a PTSD or whatever. But I think also, as a pastor and as a believer, you obviously at the highest level you have faith, right? You have faith in God, and
in that he's got a plan for you, right? But like, let's talk about below that. Underneath that are the human systems. Like, you know, because I've seen you talk about some of these systems, and you're worried whether they work for the people, you know, whether it is the government, whether it is the justice system, whether, you know, our financial system is working for people, whether, you know, just our brethren are looking out for each other, right? And that's I think a part where, you know, I hope more people you know, start to come to believe that, you know, we can fix some of these problems. I don't know exactly how, but
I have
it
no
does
idea.
feel like they've deteriorated over the years.
I don't think I don't know that we're trying to fix the problems. I think we're just trying to be heard. I think that's what most people are doing is that, and I think it comes from a place of empathy. It comes from a place of whether they're feeling that they need help in an area, need value or worth, or need to be heard, or need to be able to add something to something. I think one of the deepest things that all of us as people need is we need value.
Well, let's talk about being heard and feeling like you have value. And that's another thing that I think you really excel at is creating a community, right? I mean, once again, community can mean anything. It doesn't mean a church. It can mean, you know, all your friends that have kids on the same lacrosse team, or all the people that are a part of your daughter's sorority, you know, whatever it is, like however you find that group, right? Like, what's the importance of community, and especially today?
So I joined, this is the best way I can explain it today, because I joined Rotary here in Manhattan Beach, which I've been to a handful of Rotary meetings back in my 20s, I think, when I worked with some guys, had friends who were like, hey, you want to come with me to Rotary? It's a breakfast, blah, blah, whatever. I never thought twice about it. But when we moved here, a guy who used to be the police captain, I knew him through a family member. He came to the church a few times, and he asked me, he's like, hey, man, have you ever thought about joining Rotary? And I said, you know, to be honest, I haven't even heard the name in probably 20 years, man. And he goes, well, why don't you come join me one time? And so I thought, coming to Manhattan Beach, when without going into the story of like how we ended up taking the church and how we got here, when we were asked to take over this church, I was reluctant because, and I'll be honest with you, my first response was, you lost your mind, because I never wanted to be the pastor. I've pastored in positions in different areas, from youth to music to young adults to kids to you name it, all the different areas. But to be the pastor, like, no, not me. But coming here into town, I thought, okay, I said to my wife, I said, because my wife has done a lot of food competition. She cooks. She's a professional cook. She's not a chef, but she's done a lot more without, you know, all the details. Like, she's done some awesome things. She does food really well. She does family really well. I have always just been a people person, you know? And so when we eventually said yes to it, it was like, well, you do food, I do community. Let's just be ourselves and create a space where people can come and feel like it's home. And I wanted to do that in the community outside the church. So when I got here, I was like, how can I get involved outside these walls in the actual community of Manhattan Beach? And so when he asked me to join him in Rotary, I thought, this is perfect. I had no idea what I was getting into. There's over 100 people in the Manhattan Beach Rotary. It's pretty, I mean, it's a lot of the who's who's of Manhattan Beach.
It's a pretty influential group, to say the least. In
It's
fact, it's
not a
probably one of the more
networking.
influential Rotaries out there, I would think.
You're not there to network your business. Let's just put it that way. And so the first year that I was there, I was asked to be on the board, and I was humbled, honored to be asked. I was like, me? Like, really, guys? Like, there's a lot of people that are deserving, that are, like, you know, in good position around here. I'm a pastor. Like, are you sure? And they were like, yeah, absolutely, we want you on the board. And there was some conflict that first year that I was on the board, and I got to be a part of it. It was pretty awesome that, like, I sat in the middle of it, and before I knew it, something that I desired to be a part of, I was asked to sit at the table. You know?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I mean, well, when I think of you in the Rotary and the importance of having that perspective, I think it's extremely valuable to all those people involved there. And then just to back it up really quick, I mean, just so people can put this in perspective. I mean, when you were deciding, and this is like anybody deciding on a job and relocating and all this kind of stuff, you have to realize South Hills Church is probably one of the most recognizable, I think, landmarks just because of where it's located. But the church itself is about as unassuming as anything you've seen. It's probably less assuming than most of the houses around it.
Oh, 100%.
And it literally is next door. And by the way, we have a lot of audience from that go to this church, but American Martyrs Church and the school, that's arguably one of the most magnificent set of buildings and real estate probably in the world. It's unbelievable.
We can't even compete with our neighbor's backyard. Let's just put it that way.
I mean,
people come in and they go, I feel like this is home. And I'm thinking, like, you mean home back in Florida or like Ohio or
Yeah.
Pennsylvania?
No, the juxtaposition is unbelievable. And then you guys have this like really fun relationship, I think, between you and this magnificent, huge church on the hill behind you. And and then on top of it, you have community. So Martyrs creates a community. You guys create a community. Manhattan Beach Country Club creates a community. You have,
exactly.
you have the Rotary. You have all the different, Pickle Ball. Like everybody's in these communities, and I think the people that find these communities are actually better suited for today's world. And I think we're finding a lot of people don't have that sense of community.
100%. And you know what I found being in Rotary? I didn't know. There's I think there's somewhere around 120 members right now. And I'm on the board again. So I've been on the board 2 out of 3 years that I've been there. And I'm like, and actually, they just asked me to be on the board again next year. And there's only, I think, 8 voting board members. And so when things like that happen for me, I'm very humbled. I think I get a little bit more overwhelmed than I think some might be. You can take those things in and gain arrogance and pride and be like, ooh, look at me,
Yeah.
I'm doing exactly what I wanted and what I said I was going to accomplish. I never said I was going to accomplish any of these things. I came to a town that I felt unworthy of being in and feeling like, who am I in this town of somebody's, and I'm a nobody to no extent, and we're making waves where we've got people of great influence that we're being able to encourage and go out from there. Rotary, these people, like, that's their community.
Yeah.
They hang out with each other. They get together all the time and do all these things. And I'm like, I have the church over here where I have 200, 300 people that I can depend on to have a community. And now I have Rotary and I see all this. And I think the power of community, people don't understand.
Well, and by the way, that power of community, well, not only does it give you a sense of belonging and it can get you out of dark times and actually make you feel like you can, articulate, be heard during times where you don't have faith in the system or maybe even faith in yourself or whatever. I would argue that these communities also have the power to bring faith in a system back, right? Like if we need to change something in our local government, that Rotary can do it, and if you need the church community to back it, and get out and get the petition signed or whatever it is, you can enforce that change. So like you said earlier, which is people want to be heard. They want to have their voices heard. They maybe they're hurting or they want to change something. Well, this community and what we just talked about with faith, hopefully combines with what I wanted to just bring up next, which is this idea of like moral compass, ethics. Like, I like the way you sermon, but I also like the way that you talk in a secular manner about, the importance of living by rules and guidelines that make you a better person. Like, do you feel like we can get things back on track in certain ways? Because I do feel like leadership, particularly in Washington, D.C., is not leading by example very well.
Yeah, I think what's so difficult about the moral compass and kind of where we draw the line of what's right, what's wrong, there is a lot of gray area in humanity. And I think what religion does is religion works so hard to find the black and white and to make sure that their black and white is heard and understood and accepted, all of the above. At the end of the day, there's a lot of gray area that even if you go to like a Bible perspective, you're going to go, well, how come this guy reads it that way and that guy reads it this way? And theologians have been arguing for centuries over topics that read the same in each one, whether it be the law, which is, the Jewish community supports the Torah, looking back at like where it all was founded, or whether you look into the New Testament and you believe that Jesus was kind of the embodiment of all of that. I mean, most things that we see nowadays will say that Jesus was a real man. Like it's hard to deny that he existed. It's hard to deny some of the things that he did that are also recorded in the Bible. And it's hard to deny that the life that he lived was a life of complete sacrifice for others, right? So he's basically saying, my mission, my what I'm trying to get you guys to understand, I will give up my life for it. And it's not crazy. It's that you actually love each other and love the God that created you. This is his message, But every religion has a message that believes wholeheartedly that this is the foundation of humanity.
Right.
We can argue, to the end of time, what was the very first religion? And you could go back 6,000, 8,000 years ago and go, well, this one was founded first, and because of what we believe in artifacts like this is where we think the religion first came from. But all in all, at the end of the day, 80% of humanity believes in God. That word God is subjective, but believes in a higher power, a higher being, something that possibly put us here, created us. I don't know how that happened, but there is something out there, right?
Well, and I'd even argue, like, there are plenty of people I know that are self-proclaimed atheists that believe, in the universe and the manifesting of things and whatever that sort of ideology is, or that religion, right? Like, so there is.
And most of that would be karma, wouldn't it? Though?
Yeah,
like it would
exactly.
Be what you do unto others, what you'd have them do unto you. Like
Yeah.
if you treat people bad, you're probably going to end up getting it back.
Yeah.
I mean, so, but to me, the more that I will say this, I never wanted to pastor, but the more that I am in a position of trying to teach, and I always say this from the platform, I'll just say from the platform, is that I'm here to encourage. I'm not a big advice giver, because my advice may or may not work, but I can encourage you. I can definitely encourage you in the principles that I see and believe have worked. And I believe that encouragement gives us an opportunity to make the decision on our own, but with a bit of confirmation,
Right.
To where I'm not sure about this either. Again, most of what we do in life, even if you've got a business plan put together based on all these things, you still have faith that it's going to work, right?
Yeah.
You haven't seen it yet.
That's true.
So our moral line has to be somewhere. And if even if you believe that like life just formed, then man, it's pretty ironic how it formed. Whether, you see man and woman and how the anatomy works, how the human biology is put together, all of these things. And it's like, it's pretty uncanny, like how it just happened to be,
Right.
And then if you think about that and you start to think about like, not just how our body works, but how our minds work and how we operate, how the mind, my wife is all into peptides right now, right?
Right.
It's a big craze, and I'm a believer too. I'm taking some as well, but
Right.
I look at it as these peptides are kind of reminding your neurosystem and your brain and all of your different things that go on inside of your brain, your body, everything that
Right.
reacts to things, is that like, hey, remember how you were supposed to do things? Let's go back to that. And it's like, I know you've been doing it this way, but that's because you've screwed things up. So we need to get you back to normal.
Well, what's interesting too is that you bring up peptides, you bring up how did everything begin, and obviously there's there's the Bible version of it, and then there's also science's theory behind it.
Sure.
And it actually brings you right back to faith again, and it brings you right back to ethics and morals again too, because if you look at say the way the science and health community worked around the COVID epidemic, you would argue, well, it seemed as if some people were more interested in monetizing it, or more interested in taking advantage of it in order to make money from a pandemic versus actually protect the faith and belief that people have in medicine and healthcare, right? Like there's a lot of different things that are coming out where it seemed like people lost their moral compass a little bit, and because that moral compass was lost with, say, X, Y, and Z scientists or doctor or whatever it was, that actually trickles into our faith and belief in the healthcare system and in the science around health, and it creates this real distrust in the system that needs to get brought back. So it almost, we talk about faith. Faith is so across the board in so many different dimensions. It's not just the way people think about it in terms of the Bible, but, the pandemic had people lose faith in a lot of different things, including supply chain and the faith that we actually had control of it. It turned out China had a lot of control over it. To community, I mean, you have these different communities that also create, a trust and an honesty that people believe, hey, I'm not a part of Rotary, but I actually believe they do great things for this community. But heaven forbid somebody loses their moral compass and actually uses the Rotary to do something wrong. Then suddenly you harm the faith that's involved with that. And I think, that brings me back into the final things, and we'll wrap this one up and do 100 more episodes to cover all the tips of the iceberg that we hit today. But this belief also that, like, I think as Americans, we should have this faith in the system, the faith in the nation that got us all these opportunities. And if we put effort into it, we'll be able to create more opportunities. And, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for it, and all the different things that make us excited to be Americans. I feel like that's been lost lost a little bit too, like this idea of being excited about being a patriot for this country.
I think it lends to the very same thing as faith is that like we don't have faith in the system, we don't have faith in humanity, we don't have faith in much around us, and so at the end of the day, what I think most people have this thought process of like, well, I don't really know what patriotism is, because if I'm supposed to be proud to be an American, I don't love what's happening in America. Now, that doesn't matter if you're conservative, if you're liberal, if you're a Republican or Democrat, like you're not happy. Nobody's happy with everything right now. You might be happy with one thing. Maybe you're happy with our president. Maybe you can't stand our president. Maybe you're happy with ICE. Maybe you can't stand what's happening with ICE. Nobody's happy with the other side or with the opposition right now, right? Of course, it's always been that way. So, but the problem is that I think most people are not sure that we can ever be happy. I think most people think it's never going to fix. It's never going to get better. We're always going to be in this fight. So now the fight is about proving my point. And proving my point is still comes from the same place as back in the beginning, is that like I want what you want. Like I do want freedom. I do want a place that I can be proud to live and proud to be called a citizen. But at the end of the day, like I'm not proud of what's happening in this place, so I don't know how to be a patriot. That's what I see. I'm not saying, I think it's very warranted, because I remember I just saw something not long ago, and it was Ronald Reagan, and he was talking about the fact that every country you go to, like if you go to Ireland, you can't become Irish. You go to, Japan, you can't become Japanese. You might become a citizen. You might be able to become you can go into their country and live there, but you come into America to become an American. And why? Because of what it stands for. It stands for freedom. It stands for a place where we can believe in the faith that we have. We can step out of ourselves and try to figure things out and go, I want what's best for not just me, my family, and what is close to me, but what's in front of me and what's around me. Not just me, but my fellow American and America itself. We have to believe that it's possible.
I love the fact that you inspired me to play like some Marvel climax music during that. That was a really good speech there. This has been an awesome podcast. I think what it has done is it's opened up a lot of questions that we need answered over multiple episodes. So we're gonna have to figure out how to get you back and maybe do something a little more extensive. But the one thing I want you to close out on is that quote again that your dad said. Leader with a limp.
A leader with a limp. I'll tell you, what an honor it has been just to chat with you, because I would chat with you at coffee, breakfast, lunch, anything else, but to sit down and be able to talk about tough subjects and some of the things that I think can change things is because, I guess I love doing this because I think of all the things that brought me to where I am today, all of the mistakes, all of the pains, all of the hurts and stuff along the way. And I feel like as much as I'm trying to stand up straight, as much as I try to be like carry yourself well, present yourself well, I definitely have a limp or two. And my dad always said, I want to follow a leader with a limp. And so that's my hope. Be somebody worth following.
Following a leader with a limp. I love that one. I want to keep going, but you got to get back to the church. South Hills Church, by the way, if anybody has a chance to get over there, you got to go, because I can pretty much guarantee you'll end up becoming a habit. I really appreciate everybody listening to this, secular conversation about very tough subjects, but from a really interesting perspective. And by the way, the patriot sort of philosophy does apply to people from other countries around the world. We have no problem with the fact that you guys wear a different hockey jersey or a different soccer jersey. It might be tough to beat us in the Olympics, but we respect the fact that you're going to be rah-rah on your own country. So until next time, we really appreciate you listening to Plate and Ponder, Empty Nesting with Jen and Chris Fenton, and today's guest, Pastor Bryon Bos. Until next time, we wish you an absolutely awesome, next few days. So take care.